Welcome to the Ben Mulroney Show on this Monday, June 16th, 2025. Well, it has been on the schedule for a very long time, and a lot of us were wondering what Mark Carney, as our prime minister following the last election, would do, how he would act as the host of this year's G7 summit here in Canada, in Kananaskis, Alberta. Now, I've spent a lot of time at G7 summits. I went to a number of them when my father was prime minister. I was with him when he was the host of the summit. I believe it was in 1989. It was here in Toronto, and Dad was the prime minister. And because you're the host, there are certain responsibilities and certain privileges afforded to the host. One of the responsibilities, or maybe he didn't have to do it, but he met every single world leader that arrived at Pearson and drove down with some of them. They closed down the highways to get people into the city of Toronto, to get the leaders into the city of Toronto. And he got to decide where the Canadian delegation got to decide what they were going to eat, where they're going to eat, all that stuff. And so a lot of powers. I have been very surprised to see the extent that of the powers afforded to Mark Carney on this at this summit, in terms of who else he gets to invite. You know, G7 is a very select group of countries, and it hasn't changed since the 70s, I believe. I think they added Russia for a while in the hopes of bringing them into the world order. That didn't work. But every now and then, another world leader gets to attend. But this is this is like we're living in a time where there's a lot of featured artists on songs. You don't just get a song by Maroon 5 anymore. You get a song by Maroon 5 featuring Wiz Khalifa and Megan Thee Stallion and so on. So you got the G7 featuring India, South Africa, Ukraine, and am I missing one? I think there's another one in there. Anyway, there's a lot because in my estimation, based on what I'm seeing, Canada has plans and designs to leverage this very important coming together of the most influential world leaders in one place to its benefit, to have side conversations, to normalize our relationship with India. And I don't know what the plan is with South Africa. But obviously, if there are dissenting opinions at the G7 about Ukraine, this is an opportunity for us to take a leadership position and sort of steer the ship in a direction that we would like it to go. But what's that line? If you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. Because despite all of that, and by the way, this is all commendable stuff. And what I'm learning about Mark Carney, because I'm learning about him in real time. I did not know much about him when he became our prime minister, so we're learning about him in real time. What I'm learning about is he has grand ambitions. He wants to do a lot. He wants to take on a lot. He has a lot of balls in the air. You think about all the self-inflicted wounds that we as a country are dealing with because of bad decisions that were made over the course of 10 years of the Justin Trudeau Liberal governments. He's got a lot to fix on top of the stuff that is beyond our control, like Donald Trump, like war. So he's got a lot to deal with, and he wants to deal with a lot. But the world has a way of doing what it wants to do, despite your best laid plans. And so there is a worry that despite all of his ambitions, despite all of his planning, despite all of his attempts to really wrest control of the narrative of the G7, this might end up becoming a summit that is dominated by what's going on in the Middle East, specifically the extension of the war between Israel and Gaza to Iran, where both countries have been trading volleys of missiles for going on 4 days. And that's just how it is. Why don't we listen, actually? Let's listen to Senator Lindsey Graham about his take on what he would like to see the end game being in this war, because it is a war between Israel and Iran.
But Senator Graham, the thing with diplomacy is that the Israeli prime minister is calling for the Iranian people to rise up against the regime, a regime he says is calling for the destruction of his state. It doesn't really seem like there's a compromise there, if it's truly this existential. Is this just leading us towards the outcome you say, which is the United States getting involved in military conflict?
Well, this is what I would love for the regime to fall. If you want this regime to stay in power, you're wanting people to oppress the Iranian people. You want people to threaten their neighbors, to be the largest state sponsor. Who wants the largest state sponsor of terrorism to stay in place? But regime change is not the policy of the United States. It is not the purpose of this attack yet. But if there's one attack on an American anywhere in the Mideast by Iran, then you'll get regime change. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a non-negotiable part of the deal. They can't have a nuclear program that can make a bomb. Diplomacy is preferred, as Dick says, but force may be the only option. And I've said as clearly as I can say, if diplomacy fails, Mr. President, President Trump, you've been great. Help Israel finish the job. Give them bombs, fly with them if necessary. I cannot stress to you how, if you want to get Russia right, you want to make China be better, you want to convince international terrorism we mean business, you got to finish the job with Iran.
Well, we'll see if there's any willingness to negotiate. So far, we haven't seen much.
Well, that's a big mistake on Iran's part. It's not on President Trump's. If we don't have negotiations, it's not because of Trump. It's because of the Ayatollah.
Yeah, and speaking of the Ayatollah, the religious leader in Iran, apparently Donald Trump was briefed by the Israeli government about a plan to take him out. And Donald Trump vetoed that. He said, absolutely not. And I guess they listened to him because he's still alive. You would think that the Iranian regime would be thankful that Donald Trump sort of was the mediator between those sides, de facto in that moment mediator, but not so much because, according to Fox News, Iran has marked Donald Trump for death. And just listen to what I just said there. The leadership of that country has decided that they were going to make it their policy to assassinate the president of the United States. Does this sound like a good actor to you? Does this sound like an honest broker? Does this sound like a rational player on the world stage? So when I hear the useful idiots who've lined up to attack Israel, and anytime they do anything that would be normal for any other freaking country in the world, but because it's a bunch of Jews, that's when we have a problem. The fact, when I hear the useful idiots say, oh, so why is it okay for Israel to have atomic bombs, nuclear bombs, but not Iran? If I have to explain that to you, then you need to be bubble wrapped. You need to wear a helmet every time you leave the house because it's not safe in the world for you. I like to say, don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. When somebody says something like that, they're talking to me like they are the idiot. Like it's probably one of the dumbest things you could hear. Anybody, and if you are somebody who stands up for women's rights, for gay rights, for human rights, and you are not standing with Israel in its attacks on Iran, where for the first time in 40 some odd years, the people of Iran who have been held hostage by the religious zealots of that country, if you are not standing with them as this country is for the first time on the precipice of possibly shedding the yoke of this insane regime that has caused so much destabilization in the region, so much pain, so much death, if you are not standing with them, then you stand for nothing. You are a hypocrite and your voice is useless. You are taking up space and you need to get out of the way because you are not helping. You are not helping. All you are doing is talking for the sake of talking. And you have shown us exactly who you are. This is a moment in time. For the first time, the people of that country who did not have a say in the Ayatollahs taking over and repressing that country from what it used to be. And by the way, what it used to be is not what it should be in the future. I think people think that because the Shah was a bad guy, that justifies this heinous regime. That what comes out of this hopefully can be a democratic expression of that incredible people. But if you do not stand with Israel right now on where it stands on Iran, you are part of the problem. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.